What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. Breakdown series is back. This week we're taking a look at AJ Brown versus Puka Nacua versus Garrett Wilson. If you have any other combination you want me to break down, you get to a certain point in the draft and you don't know who to take, let me know in the comment section below. Upvote the responses you agree with. So we'll start off with AJ Brown. Brown is entering his 6th season at age 27, so right in his prime. Age is not a concern. Age is not a concern for anyone in this video. I spent the last 2 seasons with the Eagles, playing all 17 weeks, posting in 88 for 1,496 yard, 11 touchdown stat line in 2022. Last season, touchdowns went down from 11 to 7. Yardage was about the same, but increase of receptions from 88 to 106. 106 receptions last season. Kind of crazy for him. Finished 7th and 11th in half PPR points per game these last 2 seasons. This season, very little is expected to change for the Eagles. They replaced DeAndre Swift with Saquon Barkley, so that's an upgrade for the ground game, but not something that's going to like alter their play style or anything. It's just like basically their running backs are going to be a little bit better, but nothing majorly is going to change there. They did add Paris Campbell to try and be their 3rd wide receiver, and while, camp reports are positive about Campbell, we've been down this road before with Campbell, so we'll see what happens there. I would say maybe let's not believe the hype until we see it happen for like the whole summer into the preseason. He can stay healthy through all the time. But basically, we should expect Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert to soak up most of the targets. Barkley, whoever the 3rd wide receiver is, kind of mix in as well. That makes AJ Brown an extraordinarily safe pick, though one whose true ceiling we can question. I know that kind of sounds odd, being like, well, he's one of the best wide receivers in football. This is one of the best offenses in football. He's been great the last 2 years. Why are we questioning his ceiling? We're taking a wide receiver in round 1, right? So like, you should probably have a pretty clear path to top 3 wide receiver numbers if I'm going to draft you in the 1st round. Like if I'm sitting here being like, well, you probably can't be a top 3 wide receiver, why am I spending a 1st round pick on you? Now, we saw during that insane stretch from week 3 through 8 last season, he is capable of it. I mean, he had 6 consecutive games of at least 125 receptions, but he did really fall off after that. From week 9 on last season, AJ Brown was a wide receiver 32, averaging only 9.2 half PPR points per game. Darius Slayton outproduced him during that stretch. He only had 1 more point than Tank Dell, despite playing 4 more games. Now, most of that was touchdown variance not going his way. Leading up to last season, AJ Brown scored a touchdown on 1 out of every 7.8 receptions in his career. Last season, he only scored once out of every 15.1 receptions. So he basically had half the touchdowns we would have expected given his usage from like going into last season. If you told us he's going to have 106 receptions, we would have expected closer to like 14 or 15 touchdowns, not the 7 that he had. And while he still wouldn't have been a top 3 wide receiver in points per game, the numbers would have looked a lot better and he would have at least gotten closer to that. So overall, my take on Brown is we know what we're getting, right? He's not going to bust unless he gets injured. We know he's a great wide receiver. We know the offense is going to be good. We know the quarterback play is going to be good enough in the passing game. He's going to be solid. He's probably going to finish right where you drafted him, right? He's going to be a mid to low end wide receiver 1, but I do question his odds of being a top 3 wide receiver. He very likely would need an injury to Devonta Smith to really like reach those numbers. That's not amazing when you're drafting someone in round 1, but if the worst case scenario seems to be that he's going to kind of return value, that's also not that bad either. Next up, Puka Nacua. Puka's fresh off the best rookie wide receiver season in the history of the NFL. 105 receptions, 1,486 yards, 7 touchdowns. Very similar to AJ Brown's stat line. Finishes 6th in points per game, 0.6 more points per game than AJ Brown as a rookie. Now, Puka, of course, benefited from Cooper Kupp missing the first month of the season. He scored 19 half PPR points per game over the first 4 weeks of the season compared to 13.1 from week 5 on. In fact, in weeks 5 through 17, so when Cooper Kupp was back healthy, A.J. Brown scored 0.9 more points per game than Puka, which is extra notable because that stretch, weeks 5 through 17, that excludes 2 of Brown's better games of the season where he went 9 for 131 against the Bucks and then 9 for 175 and 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. So with Kupp last season, Puka did perform worse than A.J. Brown. The bull case for Puka is pretty easy to make, though. We can look at A.J. Brown and be like, well, we're not expecting a lot more production, maybe with the touchdown variance, but also maybe a dip in receptions as well, because he did spike at 106. But like situation-wise and talent-wise, we're not expecting Brown to like get better. We know what Brown is. We're not expecting the offensive situation to go a lot better. We know what the Eagles are capable of. With Puka, it's like, okay, he was a rookie and he posted that level of stat line. The vast majority of players who perform that well, no one's ever performed that well, but players who perform exceptionally in year one, they still get better. Like there's still a chance that Puka just improves as a player, right? And Cooper Kupp is turning 31 in a month. He's not a lock to stay healthy. We do know that if Cooper Kupp were to get injured, Puka is probably the number 1 wide receiver in all of fantasy. But it's just like Puka can easily just improve as a player. He could be the one that they want to feature, all of a sudden getting, 9, 10, 11 targets every week, because his target floor was insane. Like you look back at the target floor last season, his only game below 7 targets last season was week 18 when they pulled him early just to keep him healthy for the playoffs. So in the 17 games where he didn't rest, including the playoff game, of course, he had at least 7 targets in every single game. He posted double-digit targets 7 times. That's incredible. Like in A.J. Brown's 5-year career, we're looking at 5 different seasons where he's been really, really good. He's never had that level of target floor. Only one season where he had as many double-digit target games as Puka Nacua last season, and it certainly was not his rookie season. We knew after A.J. Brown's rookie season he was going to be really good. Again, it's crazy what Puka did as a rookie. I'll say this, Puka is not as good of a route runner as A.J. Brown or Garrett Wilson, who we'll get to, but he's incredible over the middle of the field, and the Rams took full advantage of that skill set, right? Like they put him in position to succeed. You put Puka on a really bad offense, right? A team that just doesn't scheme players open, that doesn't put players in position to succeed. He doesn't have the season, even if you have a decent quarterback, he does not have the season he just had, right? The Rams are just a really good team, a really good coaching staff. They consistently called plays to get him the ball where he would succeed. And that combination, it doesn't mean that he succeeded only because of the coaching staff. The combination of that plus him being a great player is why he was so successful. So while he's objectively the worst, like pure wide receiver on this list, just from like a route running, a success rate perspective, he has by far the best coaching staff behind him, which is not something we should overlook. One thing I will say is that Zach Robinson is now the offensive coordinator of the Falcons, which has some people worried about Puka. In my opinion, that doesn't have any sort of impact. Robinson was the quarterback coach and the passing game coordinator, but Mike LaFleur was the offensive coordinator. McVay was the one calling plays. Like if McVay was leaving, I'd be worried because McVay is kind of the mastermind behind this offensive success, but Robinson leaving doesn't really change anything. He wasn't the one calling plays, so we don't care all that much. The offense is going to look the same as it did last season, so I truly would not worry at all about that. Last up, before we break down these 3, is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson will be entering his 3rd season in the NFL, and he's definitely not had the start to his career that many had hoped for. Definitely he had hoped for. 83 receptions for 1,003 yards, 4 touchdowns as a rookie, 95 receptions, 1,042 yards, 3 touchdowns last season. Now, those are really strong numbers, right? If someone just had that in the first 2 years of their career, you'd be like, let's go. Like, that's really, really good. But for a player as good as Garrett Wilson, you would hope for a little bit more, and I know he has hoped for more as well. Garrett Wilson is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and I feel like I just need everyone to understand how exceptional of a talent he is, and not just look at the box score and be like, oh, you can't score touchdowns. He's on the Jets. They don't score many touchdowns. Oh, you're not very efficient. Look at his quarterback play. Like, if you just look at him as a player, he's so unbelievably good. I know the counting stats don't make it seem like that, but the man had a 96 percentile success rate versus man, 93rd percentile success rate versus press coverage. He ran every single route except for the flat at an above average rate, even as the only competent wide receiver the Jets had. Like, he was wildly successful, even with like teams knowing, okay, you cover him, they have nothing else. Like, Breece Hall was their second most targeted player last season, a running back. Conklin was behind him. If you look at the wide receivers, it was Lazard, then Xavier Gibson. After them, it was Jeremy Ruckert. Like, no one, an absolute dumpster fire behind him. Like, I like Xavier Gibson. I think the team likes Xavier Gibson, but he probably shouldn't be your fourth most targeted player, right? Like, Wilson was all they had. And the fact that teams knew that, and so he was doubled at one of the highest rates in the league, would make you think, okay, he's not going to be that successful. But he was one of the most successful wide receivers we've seen in recent years against double teams. 80% success rate versus double teams, and again, maintained a 96 percentile success rate versus man coverage. Like, insane. He was awesome. He is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. He just hasn't broken out yet because of quarterback play. He's been catching passes from Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, Chris Streveler, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, like absolute scrubs. His efficiency is going to skyrocket with Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson was the 6th most targeted player in the league as a rookie, 4th most targeted player in the league last season. Only 2 qualified wide receivers had to deal with worse targets in 2022. Only 3 had to do so last season. A skill is commanding targets, right? Like, if you want to just evaluate how good of a wide receiver someone is, look at how they're commanding targets. No one's going to throw to you if you're double covered and you're not getting open. But when you're double covered and you're still getting open and we're just peppering you with targets, you know the player's pretty good at football. Through the first 2 seasons of any player's career, the top 5 target earners in NFL history are AJ Green at 5th, Larry Fitzgerald at 4th, Odell Beckham Jr. at 3rd, Justin Jefferson 2nd, and Garrett Wilson 1st by a mile. In my opinion, if both Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers stay healthy this season, Garrett Wilson is going to be a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. That is not something I can say about AJ Brown or Puka Nacua, and that's why I've adjusted my rankings. I did have it with Garrett Wilson 3rd. I now have Garrett Wilson 1st among this list. In terms of who's 2nd, I think it's super close, and the projections have it super close as well. But I'm going to keep Puka over AJ Brown. I wouldn't fault anyone if they wanted to take AJ Brown first, but what Puka did as a rookie was insane. He's extraordinarily likely to just grow as a player. And, Cup's injury history is obviously very concerning. We are 1 Cup injury away from Puka being the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. But even with Cooper Kupp healthy, I do think Kupp holds more value than AJ Brown this season. The Rams offense is just more fantasy friendly to wide receivers than the Eagles. And I think like a tiebreaker between these two is like, what could the touchdown ceiling be like? We look at AJ Brown, we say he got unlucky with touchdowns last season. Did he get unlucky, or is the tush push taking away 15 touchdowns that used to be potential for passing when they got close? Now, whenever they get inside like the 7-yard line, they're like, okay, run it a few times, tush push, it's a touchdown. Like, why would they even drop back and throw it? We look at Puka, he has a lot of room to grow touchdowns as well from last season, which is crazy to think his numbers could grow, but they truly could, right? If he just grows as a player and gets more lucky with touchdowns. So I think Brown being a little bit capped in the touchdown department, if Hurts is going to sneak in every touchdown inside the 5-yard line, Puka, wide receiver 4 last season, despite being a rookie and only scoring 6 touchdowns. So if touchdown variance kind of goes his way, he should easily outproduce A.J. Brown. But I really just can't stop myself from putting Garrett Wilson over Puka Nacua. I think we're about to see Garrett Wilson finish top 5 in targets this season, but this time it's going to come with elite efficiency instead of extreme inefficiency. So that's how I'd rank these 3. If you have any other trio you want me to break down, put it in the comment section, upvote the responses you agree with, and while you're down there, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of the future videos. I'll be back tomorrow to go over some running back sleepers. That, my friends, is the end of this one, and thanks for watching.